Every spring, Emily's kind old neighbor waved from his porch. But this year, something watched her from the blooming shadows, its laughter smothered beneath a smile. Spring in Willowbrook was supposed to mean daffodils, not dread. The town bloomed lazily that year, as if winter had clung to the soil like a stubborn weed. Crocuses punched through frost-bleached grass, and the air smelled of rain and freshly turned earth. Emily Carter loved spring, the way it promised renewal, the way her third graders at Willowbrook Elementary bounced into class with mud on their sneakers and stories of baby rabbits in their backyards. But this spring carried a chill she couldn't shake. It started during the annual May Day festival. Emily had spent hours threading tissue paper flowers into garlands for the school gym, her fingers stained pink and yellow. She stayed late to finish, long after the students had gone home to dye eggs and hunt for chocolate. The halls of Willowbrook Elementary were quiet, sunlight slanting through windows and painting the linoleum in honeyed stripes. That's when she heard the tap, tap, tap. Outside the classroom door, just beyond the reach of the light, stood a figure. At first, Emily thought it was a parent, someone tall, wearing a long, sagging coat. But as she squinted, the details sharpened. Polka-dot sleeves, oversized gloves, and a face painted bone white, with a grin so wide it split the mask like a seam. The clown held a bouquet of balloons, their colors sickly pastel, pea green, bruise purple, the pink of raw gums. One gloved finger rose to its lips. Shh! Emily froze. The clown tilted its head, the motion too fluid, too wrong, and then it was gone, leaving only a single balloon tied to the drinking fountain. When she crept closer, she saw the note sharpied onto it. Miss you, Miss Carter. Teenagers, Principal Alvarez said the next morning, rolling his eyes. The middle school drama club's doing Pennywise, the musical next month, probably someone getting into character. But the middle school was across town, and the balloons smelled like mildew, like something dredged from a basement. The clown kept coming. It appeared at the edge of the school playground during recess, lurking by the newly planted cherry trees, their blossoms still tight and green. It left gifts in Emily's mailbox. A mangled stuffed bunny with its stuffing torn out, a tiny gardening trowel crusted with dirt. Once, she found a Polaroid on her windshield after grocery shopping. The photo showed her hanging May Day garlands in the gym, shot from high in the rafters. Scrawled on the back, "Pretty flowers for a pretty teacher." Her husband, Mark, tried to laugh it off. "It's just some loser with a clown fetish," he said, flipping burgers on their back patio while their terrier, Gus, sniffed the lilac bushes. Probably harmless. But Emily noticed how he lingered by the windows after dark, how he'd started carrying his pocket knife again. Then the phone calls began. "Emily!" the voice cooed, sing-song and syrupy, like carnival music played too slow. "Let's play hopscotch. I'll hop, and you'll scream." The line went dead. The final straw was the daffodils. She found them one morning in a vase on her desk, their stems slimy, petals browned at the edges. Nestled among them was a locket. Her locket, the one she'd lost in 9th grade after the spring fling dance. Inside was still the tiny photo of her and Mark at 16, grinning under a crepe paper arch. That's when she realized the clown knew her. Not just her, but her secrets, her past. And it was someone she'd trusted. The spring fling of 1998 was supposed to be Emily's first kiss. Instead, it was her first scream. The memory came clawing back as she stared at the locket. She'd worn it that night, her freshman year, its silver heart tucked under a corsage of blush roses. Mark had shyly pinned it to her dress behind the gym, his hands trembling. They'd slow danced under twinkle lights to a Celine Dion song, the air thick with perfume and hormones. But when Emily slipped outside for air, someone followed her. A boy. Not Mark. Danny. Danny Teak. Quiet, lanky Danny, who'd moved to Willowbrook that same year. He'd asked her to dance earlier, his voice a mumble, his cheeks burning when she said she was waiting for Mark. She'd forgotten about it, about him, until she found him waiting by the bleachers, his eyes glassy, breath sweet with stolen peppermint schnapps. "You're pretty," he'd slurred, blocking her path. Prettier than the flowers. She'd laughed nervously, tried to sidestep him. That's when he grabbed her wrist, his grip too tight, his words dissolving into a wet, desperate rant. "I could love you better than him. I could. Emily had kneed him in the groin, sprinted back to the gym, and never told a soul. Not even Mark. By Monday, Danny was gone. Transferred, the rumor went, or sent to some special school upstate. Now, holding the locket, Emily wondered, what if he never left? The clown's gifts grew darker. A jar of honey appeared on her porch, swarming with dead bees. A child's jump rope knotted into a noose hung from her rearview mirror. Each time, the same loopy handwriting. Spring is for new beginnings. Mark insisted on driving her to school, his work-rough hands gripping the wheel too tight. "We should get a security camera," he said. But Willowbrook's lone hardware store had been out of stock for weeks. "Convenient," Emily muttered. Then, during a field trip to the town's tulip farm, the clown attacked. The kids were giggling, hunting for ladybugs among the rows of candy-colored blooms, when Emily heard a guttural hum, the same tuneless carnival melody from the phone calls. She turned, and there it was, crouched behind a tractor, its mask now cracked, one eye hole leaking a viscous black fluid. In its hand, the gardening trowel from her mailbox caked in fresh mud. "Emily," it rasped, standing slowly, joints popping like twigs. "You've grown." She stumbled back, shouting for the other chaperones. But when they arrived, the clown was gone. Only a patch of trampled tulips remained, their petals arranged in a smile. That night, Emily dug through her high school yearbook. Danny Teak's photo was there. Page 42, bottom corner. His face was a smudge of acne and resentment, his eyes downcast. The caption read, "Daniel Take, future farmer? No club listings, no sports. Just a blank space beneath his name." She called the school office the next morning, inventing a story about a reunion committee. The secretary clucked her tongue. "Daniel Teak? Oh, honey, he died years ago. Car accident out on Route 9, right after he left Willowbrook. Terrible thing, but the clown kept coming." The truth cracked open on a rain-slick night. Emily woke to Gus's growls. Mark was already at the window, pocket knife glinting. "Stay here," he ordered, but she followed, her socked feet silent on the stairs. The backyard was moonlit, the cherry tree's blossoms glowing like specters. There, in the center of the lawn, stood the clown. It held something limp in its arms. A deer? Number A person. Number A mannequin. Dressed in Emily's old spring fling gown, its plastic face smeared with lipstick, its wig crawling with maggots. The clown rocked it gently, humming that awful lullaby. Mark roared, charging forward, but the clown dropped the mannequin and lunged. They grappled, a tangle of fists and flailing polka dots. Emily screamed as the clown's mask tore free and revealed Principal Alvarez. No, worse, Mr. Peterson. Old Mr. Peterson, her sweet neighbor, the one who waved from his porch every morning, except now his face was a ruin of scars, his mouth a lipless gash, his teeth filed to points. "Surprise!" he hissed, and plunged the trowel into Mark's thigh. Mark went down hard. Emily scrambled for the garden hose, turned the nozzle full blast. The clown shrieked as the water hit him, his grease paint sloughing off like dead skin, and fled into the woods. But not before locking eyes with Emily and purring, "You'll always be my May Queen." Mark bled out in the ER at 3:14 a.m. The trowel had nicked his femoral artery. By the time the ambulance arrived, the clown was gone, and the backyard looked like a slaughterhouse canvas. Cherry blossoms floating in pools of black-red blood. Emily sat in the waiting room, clutching Gus's leash, her skin streaked with her husband's drying blood. The police asked questions, but all she could whisper was, "Mr. Peterson." It's always been Mr. Peterson, but Mr. Peterson's house was empty. Not just empty, gutted. The porch swing hung by one chain, the windows boarded up, the interior reeking of rot and ammonia. Neighbors swore they'd seen him just days prior, waving cheerfully. "But now that I think of it," Mrs. Wilson murmured, "he never aged, did he? Not in 20 years. In the crawl space, police found Polaroids. Hundreds. Emily at the grocery store, Emily grading papers, Emily and Mark dancing at their wedding, and beneath them all, a dusty yearbook photo of Danny Teak, his face circled in red. Daniel Danny Take, the caption read. Future farmer? But Danny Teak had no future. The call came at dawn. "Emmy Lee," the voice crooned. "You left the back door open." Emily froze. Gus snarled, his fur bristling. She'd been staying at her sister's, doors locked, lights blazing, but the clown wasn't outside. He was inside. The basement door creaked open. Out floated a balloon, pea green, reeking of chemicals. Then another, then a dozen, their strings braided into a noose. The clown emerged, his mask half melted, revealing patches of Mr. Peterson's scarred face. In one hand, he held a rusted pair of garden shears. In the other, Mark's wedding ring. "You were supposed to be my May Queen," he rasped, advancing. "Danny promised you to me. His final gift." Emily backed into the kitchen, Gus lunging and snapping. The clown kicked the dog aside, his laughter gurgling. "Danny was a good boy, a devoted son. He wrote me letters from that group home, you know. Pages and pages about you, how you ruined him. So when he took his life," the shears trembled. "I decided to finish what he started." She grabbed a frying pan, swung blindly. It connected with a sick crunch, but the clown barely staggered. He lunged, pinning her to the floor, his breath sour as compost. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I'll make you pretty again. Pretty like the flowers." The shears gleamed, but Emily had spent 12 years teaching third graders to fight. She kneed him in the groin, hard, then slammed her thumbs into his exposed eye. He howled, recoiling, and she scrambled for the fireplace poker. Gus attacked, teeth sinking into the clown's ankle. Emily swung the poker in a wild arc, striking his temple. He collapsed, his mask sliding off completely. Mr. Peterson's face was not a face. It was a patchwork, grafts of skin, some puckered and hairless, others peeling like birch bark. His real eyes were gone, replaced with glass marbles painted pupil black. "Danny," he slurred, crawling toward her. "Danny, I'm sorry." The police found her sitting on the porch, cradling Gus, the clown's laughter still echoing in her skull. Spring returned to Willowbrook. The tulip farm reopened, though tourists avoided the western field where the soil grew nothing but thorns. Emily quit teaching, moved to the coast, and adopted 3 more terriers. Some nights, she still hears the harmonica's wheeze in the wind. Mr. Peterson, Arthur Peterson, never spoke at his trial. He sits in Blackwood Asylum, doodling balloons and daffodils in a notebook, his cell walls papered with old spring fling photos. But last week, Emily received a letter. No return address. Inside was a pressed cherry blossom, its edges browned, and a note in familiar loopy script. Spring is for new beginnings.